I had to think about it for some time, and my friend said, "You are someone who starts like a business, sometimes for the fun of it, or just to see what it looks like. Sometimes you hit goals, sometimes you don't. So I have failed, but I've also won in some terrains. So this evening, from where I am, from my country right here in Nigeria, I'll be sharing some thoughts with you on exploring entrepreneurship opportunities in this
Emmanuel.
will work. I like to tell people that at the end of this season, there are certain things that will come to your mind, something that will come to a play in your mind. We had pre-COVID, we are during the COVID times, and then we have the post-COVID. And my thoughts are, when it comes to plans, at the end of COVID-19, it will be about the things you plan to do, the things you're currently doing, and the things you wish you did. I'll take that again. At the end of it all, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're not an entrepreneur, it will be about the things you plan to do, the things you're actually doing, and the things you wish you did. I'm believing that by the time you're done with this season, you look back and say, wow, it was really worth the time. I put in time and I got value for it. Okay, John, let's go.
Okay.
All right, so Warren Buffett, one of the biggest investors, for those who are, they are current in the news, you have realized that the man dumped all his shares in the airline business, according to Forbes. He dumped everything. That's not surprising because the airline business is not tipped to grow anytime soon. But that's an entrepreneur. He takes risks, he sees results, he goes for what is working and dumps what is not working. And a lot of people have grown their business acumen just by watching Warren Buffett. And so it's not out of place for you to, in your own little corner, watch entrepreneurs you respect and see what they're doing with a view to changing or tweaking one or two things to grow in your business. I've been told that some of us in this network are professionals looking to start a business. So I'll quickly run to the point that we have right here on the slides. But interesting what Andy Grove said, the former CEO of Intel. He said, only the paranoid survive. And I dare say, in a paranoid times, only paranoid people will survive. So are there businesses that are thriving? Yes, there are people that are doing good business, very good business. I must say, my wife runs a business. I run a business. We've not closed our business during the pandemic. As a matter of fact, our business, matter of factly, in the last 2 months, in the last 1 month exactly, my business has grown further than it has in the last 1 year. So we've made, in 1 month, we've made a profit for 1 year, a 1 year profit in 1 month. It's not because of my business acumen, but there's some things we put in place that are really paying off. And part of them is brand building. We actually built a brand that people trust. So in these unprecedented times, people tend to go for brands they trust. Okay, so remember, only the paranoid survive. John, let's go. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so what happens? Humans plus business versus pandemic. It's interesting to know that some of the challenges we face as humans during these times, the same thing businesses face. If I face shock, my business is shocked. If I feel concern, my business is concerned. If I feel fear, of course, my business is afraid. And then the stress that comes with it. So businesses are actually suffering, yeah? But like I said, there are always opportunities that are looking. Every time you see a challenge, it means there are opportunities somewhere. As a matter of fact, businesses are built on the fact that there will always be problems. Anytime a problem becomes, ceases to exist, businesses cease to exist because business actually exists to solve problems. What do? It's better to look at these opportunities with the eye of an entrepreneur. So I'm saying it's normal for you to be shocked, it's normal for you to be concerned, normal for you to show fear, normal for you to feel stressed out, but you must quickly jump out of that and begin to look at it because people are actually making money during this pandemic season. I looked at the figures down here in Nigeria, the hundreds of billions that was made within the last 2 months. And my question was, who made this money? Obviously, people are making this money. So if they can make it, even we might not make as much as that, but we can position ourselves to earn something reasonable at this period, and then post-COVID, begin to make giant strides in our business. John, let's flip. I have 30 minutes to do as much as we need to do. Okay? So I said crises are ongoing, like problems. The day crisis stops, I just said that. What's interesting, we concentrate so much on the global crisis, and we miss the fact that there are several other kinds of crises. I've had a personal crisis. People have family crisis. There's a national crisis, a regional crisis, and then the global crisis we are talking about. But I said the crisis signal a new paradigm of opportunities to be explored as the old gives way to the new. I experienced a mind-shifting change during a personal crisis 3 years ago. If I didn't go into one aspect of my business, which is clothing, 3 years ago, I wonder what my business talk would have looked like. But I did. Sometimes in 2015, we had a economic crisis in the country. That was so bad, most of my business is actually crumbled. It was so bad, my cash cow, which was training business and consulting business, just came to a grinding halt. But I made up my mind there was need to make a change. And what did I go to? I looked at the clothing industry. Enrolled myself for a 1 month course, 6 weeks course that I never finished the classes. But there, within the first few days, I got the basics of the class. Is it not interesting that 3 years, how many years later, is the same business that's sustaining me? I never thought about that. But I'm saying there's a business you can plant during a time of personal crisis, during a time of family crisis, that can actually birth a new paradigm and help yourself grow in these times. So that's basically my story in a nutshell. John, let's go. So we share quickly what we need to know. Don't forget, these slides are basically to inspire you, to help you see things differently. You can add something to it. I encourage you to further research because we cannot do much justice within 10 minutes. Okay? Talking about clothing business, for example, 2.2 trillion pounds global business with endless profiting value chains. I'm saying clothing business is something you can begin to prepare yourself for. The gains may not be automatic for you if you're not used to the industry, but it's a place to look at. Because in the scheme of things, there are 3 things that can never go out of fashion. It will be food, clothing, and shelter. Everyone here is operating from their house. I see houses in the background. Everyone here must eat. I ate before I came here, right? And people must wear clothes. Now you'd say, oh, well, where do people wear clothes to if they cannot go anywhere? The truth is, in the industry, people begin to focus on the basics. But that does not change the fact that clothing is still a big deal. Opportunities in what sense? More focus on classic items to be worn all year round because of the shelf life, no longer seasonal stuff. So people are prone to create things that will last for a long time, unlike things that at the end of the year you have to burn or shift and people will make losses. Cost reduced number of fashion shows and events. What has that got to do with you? Because fashion shows reduce, because costs are lowered, are increased, sorry. Events, John, your 30 minutes your 30 minutes is making me rush. I'm trying to take my time, but 30 minutes is okay. So costs will reduce number of fashion show and events. How does that bother you? Because people will not fly that much for fashion events. And that's understandably why people like Brian Buffet are pulling off. This event will not really hold. But people begin to experiment with digital presentation and videos. So if you're someone that's given to digital presentations or videos, or you have someone you can invest in digital videos, this is an opportunity to begin to market yourselves to the numerous fashion houses all over the world. I'm saying this because as an opportunity, a lot of people don't recognize this. But if you're someone that is to clothing, you realize this is a huge opportunity. So we'll see an increase in advertising, an increase in videos that reflect clothing and presentations. So whether it's animation, whether it's full video shoots, whether it's something creative you can do for industry, this is the best time to start selling. Again, because during a pandemic time, people rarely sell. Interestingly, these are the times when entrepreneurs actually need solutions. So I'm selling. I had to make a move from Lagos down to Abuja over the last few years. But it's because I need to sell. The people that you are looking for during the normal rush hours are at home. They are not going anywhere. So if you have a good presentation, a group proposal, this is the best time to send it to them. And if it makes a lot of sense, they buy it in. So partnership works this way. Life interactions with industry players, position yourself, it's time for positioning yourself. Emphasis on local production. I know US and UK are looking clearly at local production because of what has happened in China. Those that were heavily China dependent on fabric are beginning to rethink. Where we are right now, where I am right now in Nigeria, for example, we are heavily fabric dependent, but it's interesting that over the last 2-3 years, the government has placed focus on agriculture. So we begin to see cotton showing up the way rice has really helped us cut down what would have been a nutritional disaster in the country. So local production, is time to look into that. It also gives you storytelling opportunities around brands. So if you want to go into clothing, how do you sell? It's like banking products. Banking products are basically the same. It's how it is branded that makes a call to the consumers to want to buy. So in storytelling opportunities around brands, you could decide to start, no matter how small, a clothing brand. You may not have all the capacity, you may not have all the abilities, but this is time to tap into what exists, either in an existing brand where you partner, if you have the money, again, because people who otherwise will not partner are beginning to partner because the cost, the funding is not there. May I say this is the best time to sign deals? I keep saying it. This is the best time to sign deals. So build your brand around storytelling. For example, if I were to start a clothing brand around this time, I could tell a story of how it was a bad day at home. There was nothing to eat. And then an idea struck me. I looked at the only one t-shirt I had on, and I told myself, what if I can start a business like this? And then I said, well, let me give it to a young man out there, maybe a guy at the gate, my gate man, and the guy appreciated it. I'm just trying to say that you can actually create opportunities by storytelling. It's a big deal. There's no time for it right now, but you can research what storytelling is all about. I know I have been able to build all my brands around storytelling. If you go to my Facebook page, go to my Instagram page, it's all about storytelling. People are laughing, but interestingly, people are also buying. Sometimes people try to felicitate with you on a loss, but it doesn't change the fact that you're telling a story and that story is actually selling. So truth is clothing, food and shelter, I said it before, will forever remain relevant. I'll talk about the food industry at some point, which is somewhere you should click in. The value chain is very hot. It is not about to diminish in the next 50 years, right? Let's look at the big six that will enjoy more space play. I'm thinking during the COVID season, it is already, no, let's say it this way. Pre-COVID, it was selling. During COVID, it is selling. Post-COVID, it will still sell. Farming and transportation. Farming will remain a big deal, very big deal. As a matter of fact, some of the crises we have right now will be crisis of food because farmers are not able to move food from the farm to the towns or the cities. And why am I saying this? Quite interesting. People need food. People demand food. When we talk about farming, people think they have to go to the farm. No, no, no. There's a young man that's a client of mine, Let's Farm. You can check him online. Young man. He did not do, his business is not in the metropolis. He picked a space outside of Lagos, Abeokuta to be precise, where costs are low, and he built a wonderful structure. And people are investing in it. So it's not about taking your farm tool to go to the farm. You can partner with people. You can be part of the transportation system. The whole value chain from the farm to food on the table is so large that you can play in it. In your location, I don't know what the restrictions are, but like I tell people, the pandemic has made the world so flat and people so interconnected that you can begin to invest elsewhere. I have in-laws who are in the US who are investing in Nigeria, and the dividends are good. So he has investments in the US and he has little investments in Nigeria. As he watches it and it grows, he puts money into it. Because in this era, you cannot actually put all your eggs in one basket. And if it's one basket, there better be a very strong basket. Food business, like I said. Drive-thrus and delivery is a big deal right here. People are locked down at home. The number of delivery businesses that have sprung up in the last 1 month, where I am in Nigeria, is amazing. I mean, you can tell why. How do I know they are new businesses? I see brand new bikes with brand new boxes. Brand new, if you see 50 in a day, if you see 20 in a day, because I move around too, you probably see 10 new bikes, new branding. It tells me one thing. It's either the person who's already running the business is making more money, so there's need to buy more bikes, or the person who has never run the business has seen possibilities and is now running a business. So please, drive-throughs, deliveries, food business is a big deal, right? And then of course, health supplements, hospitals, fast pharmacies. Hospitals will never close down. Pharmacies will not close down. Supplements and health health is a big deal. So supplements, hospitals, and pharmacies. I hope I'm not rushing too fast. I hope I'm not too fast. Please, can you hear me?
Yeah, carry on. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm trying to, what time? That's why I'm a little bit fast. So health is still a big deal.
Don't rush,
So
just take your time. Yeah.
The supplements business booming. Hospitals will boom. Pharmacies will boom. So if you're in this industry, awesome for you. But if you're not in this industry, this is not the time to say, this is not my industry, I'm not interested. This is a time to partner in an industry that is working. A friend called me up some months ago. He started out the pharmacy and wants me to partner in it. I want to look at that proposal. If it works, I'll put my money in it. Interestingly, he has over 15 years experience as a top marketer for top pharmacies. So that's where to put your money, because that's where it's actually selling. I see multi-level marketing growing, particularly the one that is health related. I don't know why they are not selling during this period. I don't know if it's about health restrictions, but I would have thought if you're talking about immune boosters, all those kind of sales, this is the best time to sell. But I see people begin to talk about it more. But post-COVID, I see it growing very large. So if you have a knack for multi-level marketing, you may want to touch on that. Again, please do your research. Don't just jump into it because other people are doing it. You may not have a flair for it. Some people are naturally gifted. Some people have to cultivate that gift to go in it. Skincare will be a big deal. And fitness classes and gyms will still be a very big deal. Suddenly, people will begin to realize, people have never thought about it, how important health is because of the implication during this COVID times. John, please flip. John, how many minutes do I have? John.
Yeah. In the next 10 minutes should be fine.
Wow, that's why I'm running. Okay, let's run. I hate to talk too fast. Let's go. Next one. Okay. I just hope people are. Let me check my phone. Okay. So I've talked about these opportunities, but it's important to see the mold you should find yourself in order to take advantage of these opportunities. A lot of people have said, I'm not an entrepreneur. I just prefer earning my salary from, collect my money at the end of the month and all those stuff. But I see the people that will begin to make faster, quicker marks will be entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are people who work for people, but with the mindset of people who own the business. I'll say that again. Entrepreneurs are people who work for people who earn a salary perhaps, but who have the mindset of people who run a business. So you're an entrepreneur. If an entrepreneur of an owner business can release the business and put business in your charge and go to sleep, that means you can run a business. Several years ago, my boss was just traveling England, just traveling around the country. And one of those times, it just occurred to me, if this man didn't have faith in me, he won't leave his business in my hands. It means I can fare very well in my own business. That began to make me think about the possibility of owning my business. And today, thankfully, I own a business, and he's quite proud of me. As far as concerned, he has seen that in me. Why he didn't tell me, I can understand, because it means if he lets me know, I will have left his business. So who is an entrepreneur? A starter, an initiator, someone who starts, someone who initiates, someone who challenges, and someone who's a driver. Some of them are born, some are made. So there's no excuse for you. I mean, if you're not born, you can recreate yourself or you can repurpose yourself for this particular fate. Either way, the setup business is taking on financial risk. Of course, there are risks. Anytime you see rewards, there are risks associated with it. It's not a smooth ride, not always a smooth ride, and the hope of profit. An entrepreneur basically creates and sells value at a price. So entrepreneurship, another synonym for it will be value creation. Are you creating value? There are steps to creating value. Unfortunately, we don't have that time, but you can actually create an value. You can create value by listening to the market, by listening to people, and taking those risks that will give you the returns that you actually need. John, let's flip. That's for an entrepreneur. Next slide. Okay. Let's look at some global opportunities you can explore. By global opportunities, I'm saying the opportunities are not just restricted to local. I spoke about local opportunities where I talked about the dispatch riders, talked about the food industry and all this stuff. Let's look at one that's more global, right? Of course, current opportunities, access and capacity to explore differ from country to country, noted. Many are pandemic impact dependent, while other ideas will stretch post-pandemic. Here are some time-relevant opportunities you can research and explore as an entrepreneur or should be an entrepreneur. Dr. Osunde will come later. He's an expert in IT and all this stuff, but maybe I should just lay the groundwork so you look at this stuff. Because there's so much noise about digital marketing. You know, people say when you talk about a topic for too long, it begins to lose relevance. Everyone's talking about it. But I bet you, only 20% are getting it right. Others are just talking about it. There's a difference between talking and then saying the right things. So I'm saying this is, if you ask me, this is the biggest opportunity in this era and post this era, digital marketing. And I'll tell you why. Once you have a hang of digital marketing, you can sell anything. You can sell yourself, you can sell your products, you can sell the products of other people, you can consult for other people on how to sell their products. That's how big it is. It's the biggest platform in this era. So I've taken upon myself to say, scratch that. Emmanuel, you don't know anything about digital marketing. So over the next 1 month, I'm going to dedicate every single day to studying deeper and understanding digital marketing more. Because the more I understand digital marketing, the more I can progress and scale my business. The more I can be a consultant to even bigger firms. And with that, I can reap back and plug into it. So the same thing I'm saying to you, please, if you're not into digital marketing and you've thought about going to digital marketing, why don't you use this period to actually sit down as if you're in a class, as if you're studying for a degree, and understand what digital marketing is? I bet you some of you have the flair or will perform better than those that are actually noise making about in this time about digital marketing. John, flip. Let's move. That's a challenge I'm handing to somebody. I talked about delivery services, so let's flip that. Professional freelancing is another great way to make money during this period and post this period. Okay, so during this period, I know of a young lady. I'm not too sure her salary is quite what I paid her within a period of days. So I do something, and let me use the opportunity to encourage professionals to do that. I mean, if you're listening to me, look for young people that are talented, that are obviously going somewhere, and invest in them. The investment over a period of time will be very big. They are the influencers in their set. They're over there. They are there. You can see the potentials. Their mates may not see it. Their colleagues may not see it, but you see it. This one is a high flyer. Invest in them. Over a period of time, as their business grows, it will be a lot easier for me to form a partnership or give shares to someone who trusted me from the beginning. Because in branding, there's the emotional side and there's rational side. But as a person, it's time to start looking at professional freelance. If you're a freelancer already, start looking at it from a professional point of view. That means you must create a brand out of it. When people are talking about several or a particular aspect of freelancing, you should be the go-to person. And graphics is one aspect. I've given graphics work during this period. A writing job. I gave the young lady a writing job, and she did it for me. What was the writing job? It will shock you. So I thought about it. What happens if Facebook should crash anytime, or they tell me I cannot log into my Facebook? Facebook has become like my diary. Facebook has been somewhere I've documented unconsciously and subconsciously documented my deep thoughts on business, life, family, relationships. So I'll lose all of that. So I gave her a deal.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think his internet seems to be freezing. Just give us a minute.
I will have lost some deep thoughts. So what am I doing with it? I'm turning it into a book. And that will form a basis for my brand building for the next level. So if you're a graphic artist, if you're into writing, I mean, great opportunities. You are into accounting, offer services. You know why? Freelancing will be a big deal because the costs have gone so high. People are retrenching. They cannot afford it. So freelancers will be the big deal. I'd rather give my job to a freelancer for a cost slightly less than I would have paid to employees. Not because I don't want to employ, but because reality is I don't have much money. So graphics, writing, accounting, programming are big deals and support to make money. Video blogging, YouTuber. Interestingly, I also noticed a trend. A lot of people are coming online to vlog, okay, and into YouTube. Why is that? Simply because people have so much time on their hands. So you see bankers that ordinarily wouldn't have been playing on their screen and all those stuff. And some of them have become instant hits. What am I saying? I'm not saying dance in front of your in YouTube or going to vlogging while they're dancing. Pick an area of interest. Somewhere you're currently an expert in, or somewhere you're planning to be an expert in, and deliver value there. It may take time, but you see, good things take time. Before you know it, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. And if you have the money, invest another vlogger or an influencer. Once they share it, before you know it, you have a couple of people. See, every time you see a vlogger or YouTube sensation blow up, it's just because one person at some point in time shared their content. And their content you create, and people who would have shared it subconsciously before realizing that I didn't charge money from this person. That has been my story, right? So vlogging for me, vlogging is the next level for me, right? YouTubing is the next level for me. Already, I've made quite so much money on Facebook. Interestingly, it's not from sponsored ads, from just being myself. I have made clearly so much money. I mean, I mean so much money, not very big money, but compared to where I was 2-3 years ago, the money I've made on social media has increased dramatically. And that can be you. It's not a time to hide your talent, or hide your skills or say, I don't want people to see me and all those. Try it. The first 1 week, people may not respond to you. But see, there's something about consistency, right? Once you're consistent, people know that you're always there for them. And before you know anything, they start logging on and then start sharing you. The clicks come, the views comes, the advert comes. And I tell you, when it comes to the world of social media, in 1 day, you can make the money. The money you make in 1 year, you can make it in 1 day. Clearly. And that's what people are surviving on. John, let's see the next one, please. Okay, now I have 5 minutes. My rush will soon be over. Woo! Rush. Yeah, so business consulting is basically a solution, of course. So business consulting is another way. Let me tell you something about this period. We are at a period I'll call a leveler. This period levels everybody. Big consulting firms, small consulting firms, big shops, small shops, because of the economic nature of everywhere. So it affords you, the entry barrier to most industries have actually been lowered. So you can actually enter. Now, business consulting during COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 is going to be different from what you had. Because right now, people are looking for new solutions. We are at a place you've never been in our entire lives. You've never been here before. It's new to us. So if you can demonstrate to me that you have a solution, there's more likely that I'll give you the permission to create. So the opportunities for branding, business models, in short, some of the business models, because we've never been here, have to be created, have to be innovated. Marketing plans have to be created. Insight into accounting and taxes. People need to know how to manage their taxes and all those stuff. So business consulting is going to be a big deal. You want to give it a shot, right? The next one, affiliate marketing, e-commerce, and social media marketing. I talked about that. Those are some other areas you can explore. Please do your research after this, because if you have a good grasp, it's a lot easier for you to invest in the things we've talked about. John, let's run. Okay, well, that's the end. Whoa, thank you for allowing me rushing your faces. I usually will take my time, but John gave me 30 minutes. I can't do much with it. But thank you for listening. I hope this has helped in some way.
Yeah, thanks, Emmanuel, for this. I'm just looking at conscious of time. What I had in mind was to have some questions after the first presenter. Then we'll have the second presenter ask another round of questions. But I will just throw one question first to Emmanuel. The question will be, one of the biggest problems we have today when you want to go into entrepreneurship or business is capital.
Okay.
You have an idea, and how to go around it. But when your problem you have is capital, how do you go around that particular issue? What are the avenues out there you think people can go around the issue of capital?
Okay, John, I'll tell you something for free. It's going to be very challenging. It was challenging, somewhat challenging, pre-COVID to access finance by way of loans, right, or grants, right? During the pandemic, it's even more difficult because people don't have, there's no cash, there's no liquid. Everybody wants to hold on to what they already have, right? So if you're going to present any idea, it must be inspiring enough. People must see the cash. You understand me? However, there's a principle that always worked for me. And that's a principle that permits me, I find in the Bible, about the woman, that widow whose husband died, and then she was about to eat the last thing that she had, and then go and die with the children. And then there was a prophet that showed up, and the prophet said, go get your jars of clay, of pots, and all of that. You know, the interesting thing I told myself, if that woman who was already in debt and her children were about to cease had gone to the neighbors to say, hey, please, can you lend me some cash? They would say no. But what they had, they readily gave her. I'm saying there are people who have things they can readily give. They won't give you cash. So if space is your problem, you can use other people's space, other people's location, other people's laptop, other people, even suppliers. Can I say this? Some suppliers have goods that they have not disposed of during this period. It's amazing. They are willing to cut deals with you. They are willing to cut deals with you. So I'm saying it's not just about cash. With cash, you have to present your idea as credible, as cash worthy, because nobody will put money in a venture that will not bring, especially in this time, short-term results. But if the things are other than cash, maybe you need little cash and other, tools to make it happen. People are willing to give you these tools. And that's why I express the place of partnership. Now, when we talk about partnership, what a lot of people like to think about is we open a business together. You write your name, I write my name, so we become partners. That's the highest level of partnership, right? You have other levels where you can just partner on a project. As a matter of fact, it's partnering on a project, and the response or reaction or the gains that you get from it that should embolden you to do a permanent partnership structure. Am I making sense, John?
Yes.
John, am I making sense?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Yes. So people, in a nutshell, people really want to invest during this period. They rather invest in something that they are cocksure. So if you have a good product, your presentation skills is very, very key. I tell people, if you've not gotten a grasp of presentation skills, please do that. It's a big deal. Once you have a good product, you can present and you can show that there's cash or there's money that's going to come from it. You likely get a hearing or listening from somebody out there. My thoughts. Okay, John is mute.
Does anyone have any other question you want to ask before we go into the second presentation? Yeah, just give me a minute. Let me try and get the other
John,
right.
John, I have a question. My name is Tommy.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emmanuel. But the question I have is, for instance, I love farming, right?
Yeah.
Well, back in 2003-4, I had like almost 5 acres of land.
Yeah.
I got somewhere, and that was when land was still, not too expensive. So, but my plan then was going to agriculture, farming and things like that, and more especially fishery, and the rest. But along the line, moving out of the country, I couldn't do that. So my question is, if I want to venture back into that, you need to start by getting tractors, cleared land, to do all those things. How do you think I could start?
Okay. What people present to you and I, professionals like you and I, as farming is not really what it is. people make it look like just throw money in and in 6 months, it will, I've tried that before. Throw money in, the crops start growing out of floor and all those stuff.
No.
The truth is, you have the local farmers. I always say that you have an interaction with the people that are involved, real farmers out there, that the people you should be speaking to. My in-law made an investment with someone who promised him that his piggery, and within 6 months, this yield, blah, blah, blah. As it stands, he lost everything there. So my first suggestion is, when you're doing farming for 5 acres or there, you don't need a tractor. It's not a tractor thing. You use local hands. Then tractor comes in when you have what they call a community effort. Some people come together and rent a tractor, and the tractor works on the farm for some period, maybe 6 weeks or thereabout. But to invest in tractor, because you're trying to get gains at the end of the day, you need profits, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't start investing in heavy machinery. That's not the best way to go, except if that machinery, you can rent it out as another source of income. Just have tractor just sitting out there and you'll be losing money. That's not the best thing to do. So I'd suggest, if you want to go back into farming, please get it. If you're going to farm in Nigeria, for example, please get a trusted hand. Or rather, you sign a contract with a business that has been known to grow in that area. I talked about a young man, Let's Farm. It's someone you want to explore. Let the word LETSFARM, Let's Farm. Quite well. Quite well. It's like the, how do I call it? Quite well. You understand? They're making gari, there's piggery, there are other stuff. So instead of going into a field because someone told you it is lucrative to make so much money, that's why I always like due diligence. I think in starting a business, a tractor is not the first thing to do. It's to find out how the people within the vicinity you bought the acres, how they grow their crops and how they make money from it. From then you can take it forward further.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. I think let's move into the second presentation, and the slide is on the screen. We have Dr. Joseph Osunde on the line. He's based in the UK. He's an experienced entrepreneur. A couple of franchise businesses out there in London. He's into properties, real estate. He's into FTSE 100 investments. He's a very, very seasoned entrepreneur and a businessman. I think we will have a lot to learn from him. So without any further ado, Dr. Joseph, you on the line?
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm sure you can hear me. And a big thank you for your patience. I know we started a bit late and a few technical issues which we're still yet about to resolve, like the sharing of screen, but thank you for your patience. Also, John, thank you for the warm introduction. When John asked me to do this, I think he asked me about a year ago to have a talk on this platform on being an entrepreneur. That was the pre-COVID era. It was quite difficult because making out time was difficult. But this time around, obviously we all know with the COVID situation, we've all got so much time in our hands, and it's also a good time to reevaluate whatever we're doing. So the only challenge was then going back over 20 years to sort of capture what's happened in terms of being an entrepreneur. So I then decided we've got a sort of vast audience to be entrepreneurs, existing entrepreneurs, and also those maybe that just want to sort of see what's out there. So I decided I would sort of title this talk, My Story, What's Your Story? John, next slide, please. Okay, so in doing that, I felt at the end of this presentation, I'm hoping, obviously those that obviously have, go away and be much more enthused to maybe improve what they're doing, and those that maybe are thinking of getting in will sort of get some very good tips on how to make that first start. Just like the previous presenter, Emmanuel F. Young, showed very vividly, it's a journey which when it starts, you have to make that sort of input to ensure you keep pushing that vision or the initiative. So to start off, I'd like us to sort of try and get ourselves into the mindset of an entrepreneur. I'm sure for some of us, this might sound like sucking eggs, but I'll tell you, in the process of actually reflecting on some of these ideas or processes, you tend to sort of refine your thinking on what to do and how best you can sort of invest either your time or your resources to become a very successful entrepreneur. So the first quote I've got there, which is just sort of a reflection, is to look at the sort of quote from Toba Beta, which says opportunities seek for a chance, but entrepreneurs make new chances. I'm sure you can agree more with me on that, because the entrepreneurs will obviously take an initiative, even if it's existing, they sort of turn it to something different and they add value. Just like Emmanuel was saying earlier on, you need to add value, okay? And the second quote there by Ryan Lilly, which says that the one thing all entrepreneurs have in common is they all started. And the one thing everyone else has in common is they haven't. So it shows the difference, the clear difference between the entrepreneur and those that may be, say, thinking about being an entrepreneur. Next slide, John, please. So in the course of the presentation, I'm hoping we have a sort of a dive into the entrepreneur, not a deep dive, because we're not going to look at the metrics, the number crunching in this space, but we'll be looking at getting to the mindset of an entrepreneur. If you're already one, how do you fine-tune your skills as an entrepreneur? If you're not one already, how do you get yourself into that mode? And then we'll quickly look at something which I refer to as the entrepreneurship triangle. And then we'll talk about my story, which is not the story, and also talk about my checklist, which is not the checklist. And then we will then explore 2 levels in which you can actually begin to get your mindset into creating opportunities. And then I'm sure you can begin to sort of flesh out your story gradually, and we have some final reflections. Right, the entrepreneur. Oh, sorry about the screen, I think it's a bit modded up, but on this slide, it's just to sort of take us back to sort of, like we said at the beginning, let's get into the mindset of the entrepreneur. And I've tried to sort of capture some images of some very well-known entrepreneurs. That is not to say that's definitive. We're not saying all entrepreneurs should be males wearing glasses or black females, as the case may be, but it's anybody and anyone that could start up an initiative, and they can then transform that initiative into some form of reality, okay? There's a lot of journeys between having the initiative and making it a reality. I mean, by all leaps and bounds, just like Emmanuel did say, it's a journey which you have to start, and then you have to sort of acquire the knowledge which you need in that space. You need to sort of research, find out, and then you can begin to actualize that initiative. And also entrepreneurs are drivers. I mean, you keep hearing this over and over again. What do they drive? They drive the initiative. And also they're responsible for the growth of that initiative. They keep moving. And we'll begin to see later in the presentation why you need to keep moving, because the business landscape, it's ever changing. It doesn't remain static. So why would you remain static in your approach to business or in approach to investments or initiatives? So if we take a deep dive into sort of looking at the employee and the entrepreneur, I just have outlined some of those components, which I'm sure you agree with me. If you look at work, for example, it's something an employee will see as, just to get money, quick returns, okay? There might be some level of excitement, but I can tell you the level of excitement is not comparative to the level of excitement if you're an entrepreneur. And the difference is because you can see something growing, you can see something you started small, yielding returns, and you can see some prospect and even taking it to the next level, okay? We're also talking about serious effort. The effort for for employees is over a period of time. It diminishes over time. It becomes boredom. And for some people, it's almost like treading water. You just feel, I've had enough of this, okay? But as an entrepreneur, you begin to sort of think about, what can I do differently? What value can I add to my existing initiative? What else could I invest in, okay? What's out there? Emmanuel sort of touched on a few ideas for investment. You begin to think continuously on a continuous basis. How do I sort of keep improving? How do I sort of, get that sort of, keep moving attitude to keep getting new initiatives in place? We talk about support. The employee will want support giving, but as an entrepreneur, you create that support. You employ people. People begin to sort of get a livelihood from you. They begin to get that emotional support, the financial support from you. And that's what you bring to the table. That's the value you add. Income. As an employee, you're thinking about immediate returns. If you don't get it immediately, you begin to feel shortchanged. You feel you're being cheated. But as an entrepreneur, obviously sometimes some investments don't have returns. Maybe for the first couple of years, you are in there. You stick with it. You keep working on it until you start getting those returns. And much later on, you see why this is in that nature of entrepreneurs. And within that space as well, you begin to see all that sort of attributes. It's not about a need. It's not just about making money. It's not just about multiple streams of income. There are other factors you have to sort of take into consideration if you really need to be, taking that journey on the long haul and making that big difference, which we all want. Next slide, please. So the entrepreneurship triangle, that's something I said I will share with you because it sort of takes you into the mindset of, like we said earlier on, how the entrepreneur does function. And it takes a number of processes to happen. And if they don't happen, there's no realization. So I sort of compare this to the fire triangle, which I'm sure a lot of you would have seen. And it's all about the fact that you cannot start a fire unless you got three ingredients, which is your fuel, your oxygen, and heat. Similarly, when talking about entrepreneurs, you need to initially have that motivation. What's your motivation? Why do you want to actually engage in this? Is it just a need? Or is it a need and also some levels of enjoyment? Or is it just out of inquisition? Or is it out of responsibility? You may be the entrepreneur manager in a firm. So you tend to sort of bring in businesses, you bring in new initiatives for your employer. But what is your motivation? You also talk about your innovation or the initiative you bring into the table. How are you creating new opportunities? Because seeking opportunities is almost like you're looking for something already created by somebody and you're trying to take it. But you need to think about what difference are you going to add to the opportunity? What sort of unique selling point are you bringing to the opportunity if it's already existing? Okay, so which is why it's very important that even if you're taking something that is existing, you need to add some value. So value keeps coming back. If you don't add any value, the whole initiative might not last for too long. And then you now transcend or transit from the innovation down to the realization. So you now ask yourself, how do I make this happen? Okay, that's when we start talking about some very practical steps, like the logistics, we're talking about the finance, we're talking about the human resources. If you have a 9-to-5, you're asking yourself, how do I sort of marry my 9-to-5 with my initiative that I'm trying to do on the side? So you need to sort of flesh out all those variables and know exactly what you do. And then once you're able to realize that, you begin to drive, okay, and begin to lead the vision. Now, the reason why I've sort of put the images down there is to show the importance of you driving your initiative. I mean, I'm sure we all can identify with a number of those logos there: Kodak, Blockbuster, Polaroid. These are very big businesses that obviously are no longer there. Netscape, it was a go-to browser, and I'm sure quite a few people never heard about it. And that's because once the initiative happens, there's a realization, you need to drive it. You need to keep innovating. You need to keep thinking about, how do I make things better? How do I tap into new markets? How do I sort of take advantage of new opportunities? Otherwise, if it's not fit for purpose, it's just a matter of time. It wouldn't exist anymore. And I don't think that's what any entrepreneur wants. You want to keep growing and developing. Next slide, please. So my story, like I said earlier on, my story essentially, I'll just very quickly recap my story. I'm a trained technologist, software engineer. I've done that since 2001. My first breakthrough or sort of initiative was my first job when I was working as a software developer. And what I quickly realized was in 2001, 2002, technology was, really hot. And, you get a job today and you get a counter offer tomorrow, and you decide, you're thinking, why should I stay here once I get the skills? But it was a case where very quickly within the industry, I realized there's an opportunity where there's a lot of mobility. People were moving around very quickly. And it was almost like getting the right skill set was quite difficult. So with a couple of friends, we saw that need because we saw how people were just moving very quickly into the industry and moving into somewhere else. Either they're getting more money or, they're getting more satisfaction. And we decided, why don't we begin to tap into this need and look at recruitment sort of service where we can sort of, have the contacts that want the job, and we can find out where the jobs are, and then we provide a service. And this obviously was the birth of so many good things that happened thereafter. And very quickly, I realized that I've got friends in my class when I had my master's degree in the UK, about 200 odd students, and contact them and find out who's looking for a job or who's got a job and maybe they want to move somewhere else. And that was a bit of a new initiative in the sense that it was sort of attuned to the sort of industry we were in, which was technology. And very soon there were more initiatives, and we realized, educational sector, we're also looking for skilled technologists, and they didn't have it. So again, that was a new opening. So that ran from 2002 up until 2006. And then we sold off the business to a very big recruiter at the portfolio, which was quite good. But in between that time, I already had the initiative of going into other businesses as well, which was the real estate in 2003, 2004. And I'm still within that industry to date. We started off as, just like Emmanuel said very rightly, shelter and food, those are two variables that we always have in human existence. So I felt, if that's going to be the case, why don't I invest in real estate? Why don't I initially provide a service? So it all started off by providing a service for sales and lettings. And within that space, very quickly, I understood the dynamics of the business. I had an ear to the ground to know exactly what properties are going for foreclosures, what properties are going on auction, how do you quickly get those properties, having your contacts within the banks and all that. So all that came into place, and very gradually, that whole portfolio grew over time. At the moment, I'm just really involved with developments, where I've left the lettings and the sales aspect to my managers to deal with for the last 8-9 years, because obviously for me, I feel where the time and the money will pay off more will be in the development side of things, which is ongoing at the moment. And in within that time space as well, the other concept of investing in franchise came up, because very strongly I felt I haven't got the time to build a business from scratch and wait for the first 5 years to start making returns. Okay, I need some sort of quick turnover, and I decided franchising, food franchising, was something else that could make some reasonable turnover. And in 2010, I sort of went into that space. And that is not to say every franchise is good. I'll be very clear on that. You need to do your maths. You need to do your homework. If any business tells you you make a 12, 15, or 16% turnover, divide that into two and say, I'll make 6-7% turnover. Don't take the 12% because there are other variables that come into place. the market factors that come into place, supply chain that come into place. So I did a bit of my sort of homework, and I felt, yes, I wouldn't go wrong. I'm already into real estate. If I own the premises and the franchises are there, so it's a win-win for me, where I can get returns from the real estate and also from the concern. So these are some of the homework you do in terms of, getting into any sort of space you want to get into. So those were clearly the motivation. They were needs, but also there's that level of enjoyment. Because with the enjoyment, you're thinking about, will I be bored doing this in the next 5 years? Will I stay up late at night to sort of look at new opportunities, to explore new initiatives? Will I sort of have the drive? Will I have the steam to talk to people about this? If you wouldn't, then it's not worth your while. So once you create the opportunity, you need to take it. You don't create it or think about procrastinating. I'll come back in 6 years. Somebody is going to start it off if you don't step into that space. With the realization, which is a key part, obviously you need to do your investigation. Like we said earlier on, you need to look at your funding, your staffing, your logistics, and then once you go live, you begin to look at how do you provide a continuous pipeline of service. Okay, so that's where the hard work comes in. Next slide, John. So over the years, I've sort of reflected and said, what can I sort of put down as some very quick sort of tick list, which anybody could sort of look at and say, right, you can compare notes and say, right, yes, that's a good one there, which I can adopt, or that's something that hasn't worked for me. Maybe I have to review that and try again. So my tick list, which is not a tick list, is firstly, you need to do your research. Emmanuel mentioned this over and over again. It's key. The investment climate in the UK is different from the States. The investment climate in Nigeria is different from the UK. So you need to do your sort of home research. What's happening within your space? What's the local economy? How do you tap into the local economy? I personally believe, don't take secondhand information, what people say. Somebody said that is a good business. Then it's not a good business. You need to investigate that yourself. You need to do your research. Seek solutions and not setbacks. I'm sure a number of us will agree that oftentimes when we go into business or we're thinking about going into business, we keep looking at the positives, which is good. You do your SWOT analysis, look at the opportunities, look at the strengths. That's great. There's nothing new about that. And so what? You begin to look at the setbacks, your threats as well. Because from your threats, you can then exploit more opportunities. But don't look at the threats as a blocker. Look at the threats and find solutions to them. I've got a threat in the area of maybe getting the right finance. Who do I go to finance? What are the interest rates? Could I get somewhere else? Could I, for example, if you live in the States or in the UK, do I do a remortgage on my property? If I do that, can I keep up with interest payments? Can I keep up with both? What if the business doesn't work? So you need to look at what sort of solutions you want to sort of get to your problems, but do try and get the problems and then find the solutions to them. Don't just look at the opportunities and the strengths, because sometimes it could be a bit exaggerated, like I said earlier on. When it tells you about 12% profit margin, you need to say, right, let me be very conservative here. I'll take 6%. How do I now sort of mitigate my blockers and get up to 10%? So that will be a very sort of stringent way of looking at it. We also need to look at things like, if you have major blockers and you're thinking it's not worth doing it, why don't you start small and have a proof of concept? Start small. So your startup cost is reduced, your risk level is reduced, and then you just have that sort of small scale startup as a proof of concept. Through that process, you can then find out exactly what's not working, what could be done better, and then you can then scale. So smart investors, that is what they always do. You have the opportunity to do the business at scale, but you don't want to start big. You want to start small, make your mistakes, learn from it, and then you begin to grow. Be hands-on. It's good to delegate, but you need to know every streamline within your business. Don't leave it to somebody else to think for you. Do it yourself. If you're going into digital marketing or you're going to the technology space, for example, it's well and good to pay somebody to do it, What if tomorrow they're no longer providing the service? What happens? Then you're wondering who's going to carry on. How do I find out what he's done? So you need to be hands-on. You need to be involved at every stage of the development process, be it a technology-based business, be it a face-to-face kind of business. You need to know all the dynamics, be involved. Get good people around you. I picked that again when Emmanuel said that, getting good people around you. If you look at all the successful entrepreneurs, they've always had good people around them. If you cannot afford to pay good people, one trick which I've tried over the years is to provide some level of incentives for them. Could it be a performance-based bonus? Could it be opportunities to own some maybe shares within the business? So you need to get good people around you, because what happens is if you have good people around you, they tend to bring more value to the business. If you have people that have little or no value because maybe they are cheap, then what's going to happen is it's going to have a knock-on effect on your business, because they're going to sort of give you very poor value, and that's going to affect the morale of your staffing. It's going to affect your customer service if it's a customer-facing business. So it has an impact on the long term. On the short term, it might be savings, but on the long term, it's got its impact. Always think of ways to improve. Never think I've done it, been there, done that, have the t-shirt. There's no need to sort of do things differently. Always think about how to innovate, how to keep improving. One attribute that is very common with very successful entrepreneurs is they read a lot. They develop themselves. They want to keep trying new things. They never stop. They always want to find the next challenge to take on. So it's very important. Within any space you find yourself, keep improving, keep innovating. Next slide, John. So I'm just going to quickly touch base on creating opportunities, because I feel it's one thing to think about starting up, and you might start up, which is great. But if you don't, again, you could reflect on how do you sort of create opportunities or even refine existing opportunities. So there are two phases to this. The first phase is the conceptual phase, which is obviously the dreamland, where you look around yourself, you look around your immediate environment, you look around your society, you're thinking, what sort of service, what products can I provide and add value to it? So it's a conceptual phase, you're thinking. But I can tell you very clearly, wherever you live, be it the UK, in Nigeria, or in the States, or any part of Europe, if you think about disruptive concepts, they are often deal breakers. What do I mean by disruptive concepts? These are concepts that obviously they don't work in a sort of obvious manner. It works in a way such that it's not the common way of doing things. For example, I mean, we've heard about Uber, we've heard about eBay and concepts like that. Yes, they've taken technologies that do exist. These technologies were not new. They've always been there. But the way they sort of now use this within the markets, it's a way that ideally you wouldn't do that. You would do it the other way around. For example, let's take the concept of maybe Uber, for example. Prior to Uber, you would think about you need to sort of go to a cab service, and then you obviously then say, oh, I want to go to XYZ, and then they find a cab for you. Now, the problem with that would be, firstly, you need to make your way down there physically, or you might make a call to a local cab service, and then they send a cab. But what you often find in the process will be, you need to find a customer to get a driver. So those cab services will wait until they get the call or somebody walks in. But the disruptive idea there was the fact that you're not using an existing technology to initially get the customer before you find the closest driver. So it's all about thinking outside the box. So you get a concept that is already there. How do you do differently? How do you make it in such a way that it doesn't follow the norm? That would be a deal breaker. Obviously, you have to fine tune that, but that's a starting point. Okay, and you begin to ask some questions. Those initiatives, are they out there already? If it's not, why not? Why is nobody doing it? Is it because there are certain constraints that's not obvious? Okay, if somebody's already doing it, then you ask yourself, what will be my unique selling point if I'm going to go into this? And then what are your capabilities? What sort of skill sets do you have to bring to the business? Have you got some accounting background? You've got some technology background, or you're a marketer, okay? Apart from that, what other skill sets can you bring in to drive the business? And that gives you the opportunity to then find out what sort of skill sets you then need to get on board. The next phase, your logical phase, where you now ask yourself, how do I make this work? So this is where the practicality comes in, okay? Where you now begin to analyze your ideas, you begin to sort of look at your numbers, your figures, you begin to look at your blockers. Why can't you do it? And then find solutions to them. And then you begin to ask yourself in a very affirmative way, when do I start? Not if I can start. And then you begin to have your plans with timeline. Next slide, John. So that's just a very quick overview of my story in terms of the experiences and sharing those with you. Now, I'd like you to obviously to reflect and think about your story. What are your blockers? If you're already you're an entrepreneur, what could you do differently? If you have blockers and you're obviously not starting off, how can you start small? Will you consider starting small and then have that as a proof of concept? It's also very important to bear in mind that your initiative is your intellectual property. So keep it safe. Don't share it, unnecessarily. Only share it when you're sure that it's yours. Because if it's not patented, it's not in any way legally yours. Somebody can sort of adapt that very quickly. So it's very important to realize that it's your intellectual property. Okay. It's also good to have a very good and progressive inner circle. Keep good people around you so you can sort of bounce off their positive vibes and ideas. It's better to try and fail rather than wishing you had tried, because then you wouldn't know how it would look like if you had tried. Next slide. So to round off, I'll try not to bore you too much with this, but it's just to sort of have some sort of very quick and final reflections. The first chart on the right is based on what you call the Gestalt therapy. I mean, I do a lot of psychology reading and invest my time in that, because that's how you tend to sort of read people very quickly and read situations you find yourself to make the most out of it. Now, this whole theory is based on the fact that the viewpoint of truth, what we all call truth, or we realize what's right or what's wrong, it's very, very diluted. It's based on how your experiences have been in that space. It's based on how you see things, and how you see things is based on your experiences. Now, and those experiences will shape your perception. So, which is why some people will think, oh, that's not possible, or this is possible. It's all based on our experiences shaping our perception. However, we've got three pathways from there. We either decide to change our mind about those sort of perceptions we've got, and obviously now begin to build our own truth from that, or we can just decide to discard those values and begin to rediscover the truth ourselves. Now, the reason why I've sort of highlighted this is based on the fact that we don't actually accept the truth until we've actually sort of built it up ourselves. So Emmanuel could tell you, investing in maybe clothing business is very good. You don't really buy into that truth until you build your own version of that truth, which happens by your experience, you investigating and finding out for yourself. So it's a very good place to start from. And the second reflection is about the fact that positive psychology, where people sometimes think that your destiny does so determine, or your history does determine your destiny. But, well, you can argue that on both sides, but very largely it doesn't. The guy that sort of had this quote, Boris Cyrulnik, he's a Jew, and he was obviously at the age of 5. He lost his parents being taken to the concentration camps, and he was handed over to foster parents. Unfortunately, when the Nazi German took over France, he was then given over to the authorities to be taken over to the concentration camp. In between that process, he escaped, and That's how he stayed the next 5 years, between 1936 to 45, in the farms, working in the farms. And after the World War in 1945, he went to foster care. And eventually, as we speak, he is a professor in medicine and also a psychologist. Now, all that is about the fact that when things happen, unpleasant things, you've got fantastic ideas, they seem to be blockers, or you're already in business, you're having so many challenges, it's not making money, unpleasant things happen. So how do you feel about it? Do you get so crushed about it? You feel inadequate and you decide, right, I'm not good enough, or it's not worth it? Or you can take it as a challenge and begin to look at, how do I move forward? And in that process, you begin to redefine that space. So yeah, so I just felt it's good to end up on that note based on those reflections, just to encourage those of us that are thinking to get in. And if you're already in, whatever the situation is, be it the COVID situation or the local markets or economy, you need to look forward. You need to begin to look at, is it a challenge? How do I take things forward? Okay, so that's all from me, and I'll say thank you. You've been a fantastic audience. So I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Osunde, for your presentation. So we just have some time for Q&A. I know time is fast spent, but we want to have some questions. I'm sure they'll have some burning questions for some of the participants on this webinar, in terms of who are exploring entrepreneurship, who are thinking about it, and have some burning questions they want to ask any of the two presenters. I think you can try putting your questions on the Zoom chat, or if you're bold enough, you can unmute your phone and ask a question. That should be fine.
Hi everyone. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my first question is to Doctor, and the other will be to Emmanuel. Or maybe I should take the first one first. I have an investment account, a portfolio, GIA, and after just within this first few months of COVID, I took the account and I saw all the gains have been wiped out. So basically, what I've invested is not at par with what is in my account. So if I liquidate today, I'm going to be at a loss. Meanwhile, at the end of February, when I checked the account, I had something sumptuous, something very interesting in the accounts in terms of gain. If I liquidated that in February 28th, I would have made a lot of gains. But now, the account is just below what I invested over the past 5 years, 6 years. It's a target-driven account. It's a GIA, so they can invest into different portfolios. And I didn't take the maximum risk, so I didn't get the maximum investment. That's why I left the account when there was threat. I could lose money, but because I wasn't really very bullish, I felt, let me leave it. It shouldn't go through. But now, what do you advise? Do you think I should still work on its targets, or in your opinion, I could just liquidate and cut my losses and just move on?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, and I sort of identify with that position because my FTSE 100 investment portfolio, I'm suffering the same condition as well. I'm in the same position where there's been a dip in all the markets apart from the government bonds. Every market has dipped, and there are huge losses. Now, it's a difficult one to say because what's happening within that investment space is the fact that if you try to sell now, you will struggle to sell because nobody wants to buy. And if you sell for little or nothing, then you're making little or nothing in return. So it's going to be some losses as well, huge losses or more losses. On the flip side, just looking at the other side of everything, once the post-COVID situation is over, I mean, every economist is speculating that there's going to be a huge bounce back. Okay, so because there's a lot of injection of financial capital by various governments, and there'll be strategies to obviously keep businesses running and all of that. So then you might see the trajectory going up very, very steeply. And if you sold, then you trying to come back to buy, you buy at a higher level as well. So it's a very difficult one. But in my experience, I would say split the portfolio into two. Okay. Look at the markets that are doing very poor, the worst markets. You might sort of transfer or get your money out of those, but still keep your money in another 50%. Don't pull everything out, because the problem will be when you're trying to get back in, you might have to buy at a higher cost. So keep your portfolio sort of split. Get 50% into the sort of the investments are still doing okay, because the losses are not the same. When you begin to look at them, you begin to see that some are not very bad. Like I said, the government bonds are still doing very well. Relatively well compared to other sort of investment portfolios. So I would say that's an advice. That's one thing. I mean, that's one way you can approach it. But again, some other person might have a different opinion on that.
Yeah. Maybe we should keep our. Maybe when we did answer, maybe we can keep it as short as we can, so can accommodate more questions. It's just a thought and observation. Someone asked Peter. You had a question you want to ask? Oh, let me see the chart. You just need a question there.
Yes, it is to Emmanuel.
Yeah, carry on, please.
The question is to Emmanuel, and I think I had written it on the chart earlier. Looking at the 6 big areas he mentioned earlier, post-corona, would transport is listed among them, and I was wondering, does that also mean there is hope, big hope for those who are in taxi or Uber industry, especially in African cities?
Did we get the question?
Can I repeat?
Yeah, just make it quick though. So yeah.
Yeah. Emmanuel did list 6 areas that termed as big areas to look forward to post-corona. My question is, transport is among those areas. Does that also mean that those who are in taxi industry, cabin, or Uber have got something to smile about going forward post-corona?
Okay, I hear you clearly.
In African cities specifically.
Yes. From what you can deduce from what Dr. Joseph said earlier, that opportunities and capacities are specific to your regions. Uber is a global business, but how it responds or plays out or pans out in countries are different. So for example, I can tell you, even within countries, in Lagos, for example, the transportation climate has changed drastically. It's the biggest city in the country, but the government began to take steps about correcting some abnormalities in the system. So right now, more people with private, perhaps unregistered taxis and transportation are beginning to make big money, particularly in this pandemic, while they are seeking to regulate the activities of Uber or Bolt or likewise. So I would say the same thing that Doc said. Please look at your local economy or your local space and see how that works. I say transportation because people need to move. But I don't know about your city. In Nigeria, particularly in Lagos, the dynamic is quite different. In buses that normally would sit, you don't have this much, in buses that will sit like 10, now 4 people sit and they charge higher. We don't know how that will play out post-COVID, but we are saying people will always move.
Yeah.
Should people say for the next 6 months, we'll still do social spacing within public transportation, it means you need more vehicles out there. So I would say, out of the way of what Doc said, split your portfolio. I talked about putting your eggs in one basket because, again, I'll reiterate what he said. Experts are saying right after this COVID period, there will be an upward spiral in the economy. Now, of course, you know how it plays out. 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 1 year ago, no one foresaw this. So what if there's a third spike or 10th spike or thereabout? But whichever way, it's something to look at. And like I said, in Lagos right here, private owners of businesses are making perhaps more money than the Uber guys because they are all over the place, because the bus stops are packed full with people and there are no vehicles going anywhere.
And if I can just add to that, if I can add to that, just to echo what Emmanuel is saying, I mean, the key driver in that industry or that space is social distancing.
Yeah.
In the next 4, 5, 6 months, even if we've got a vaccine, people would sort of not want to use public transport as a first option. If they can afford it, they rather travel maybe in their car, or if they want to use Uber, because the way we travel would be very different. People will start thinking very, clearly, do I need to make that journey? If I need to make it, I want to have a bit of social distancing. And what's the best way you can do that? You're going to have a cab or something, or you can drive yourself. So that might be a driver for that industry.
True.
I think that's a very good one. That's what I've been thinking about. Maybe I should get a local Uber and do some Uber and Uber business. I've just been thinking about it myself also. Emmanuel, do you have any questions? Yinka, you have a question? I know you had a question some time ago.
Yes, I have a question for Emmanuel.
Yeah.
I mean, on the points that you raised in terms of, investing in Nigeria, people in diaspora and all that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the fact that, like a month ago, Naira has lost about 19% in value, and it's a free fall right now.
Yeah,
you know where it's going to stop. Now, there's, so to say, if you're a business person and you're sensible and you're smart, you can actually get some money from here very easily, from the banks or whatever it is. So if you source money internationally and you bring it into Nigerian market, I think the market there is quite volatile. And is it actually the right time to repatriate money and invest in Nigeria now? Because you don't really know where it's going to fall. If your projection is like 25% return on investment in farming or Uber or whatever we're talking about, after like 2 years, and after 2 years, the value of Naira has fallen down to like maybe 700, and you've taken the loan at 525 that is today. Whereas you could have taken the loan at 450 as a month ago. Now, how do you break even on that? Is it wise to take money from a place like here or America to invest in Nigeria right now?
Interestingly, someone called me a few days ago and said, Emmanuel, I have dollars. Should I put the money? Should I turn the money to Naira, or I should leave it in dollars? So I picked up the phone and I called my friend Jide. I said, Jide, someone has put me in a corner. If I tell the person go this way and the business investment does not go where it's supposed to go, he say Emmanuel told me to. So at this point, I rather someone like John, who is basically into that, that stuff. John, is he on?
Yeah, I can hear you.
John, this is your exact question you should be responding to.
Don't worry, I'll speak with Yinka in more details, maybe offline.
It's your field. I consult you on that.
You consult me on that.
John,
Hello.
John,
there's some questions on the chat. So let me ask some questions on the chat, please. One question from Andrew Tafame. He says, my question is to Dr. Osunde. We do say that small is beautiful. How can the SMEs survive in times like this, knowing fully well that they lack the skills like ICT skills?
Well, like we said earlier on, you need to develop your capabilities. There's no two ways around that. And I think one advantage you've got these days in terms of upskilling is the fact that you've got a vast resource online to develop yourself. If you lack IT skills at this time, it's almost like saying, the core skills or the basic skill for you to operate in the modern business world, you struggle with that because you have to engage with your emails, you have to do your attachments, you might want to do your digital marketing and things like that. So those skills, I mean, IT skills, technology skills, we're not talking about development or programming. We're just talking about the capability to actually enable you engage with technology. You just engage with technology. You're not creating new technology. You definitely need that. And there's loads of training out there, loads of resources out there to help you upskill. So I think in terms of skills, there's a lot out there. You just have to search for them. There are free ones, there are paid ones, but I think even the free ones will do you a good service. So it's a must. You need to upskill.
Yeah. Another question from Kemi. He says that what about hospitality, particularly Airbnb, post-corona?
Okay, is this Airbnb Nigeria or anywhere else?
I think anywhere else,
Anywhere else?
Yeah.
Well, Nairobi too, I want to know.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if we begin to sort of look at what's happening within this COVID period, the first thing you want to look at is how do you think our travel is going to change based on this whole pandemic? Our travel is going to change greatly.
Yeah.
We're going to decide exactly what countries to go to and when to go to those countries, depending on what we find out about those countries during this whole pandemic. So I would say Airbnb, watch that space, because sort of holiday patterns and travel patterns, at least in the next 6 to 8 months, will change. People will travel less. Okay, taking that sort of risk at this point in time, you have to be very clear on that our travel habits will change, our holidaying habits will change, and you will expect hospitality in terms of, accommodation in that sense will have a dip. And, even if we have a vaccine tomorrow, people will be very cautious.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so we have to be very careful with things like Airbnb, because anything that has to do with travel patterns, journey patterns, changing because of the COVID, they will suffer. They will suffer a great deal.
Yeah, thanks for that. Anyone wants to ask any new question?
Hi, John. I don't want to ask. I just want to say something. Following what Emmanuel just said. Yes, understanding the market is very key when you're looking for business ideas and where to venture into. But I also think that another thing that's so critical is understanding the behaviors of the environment in where you are based. So, for example, what am I trying to say? I'm based in the US, and hospitality, we think, people will be cautious, but hey, guess what? It might not be so out here, because people don't want to be locked up. That's their natural behavior. They want to be out. They want to enjoy themselves. They want to see the sun. So, I mean, I personally think that, of course, once the laws are relaxed, there'll be a bit of caution initially, maybe for the first 2 to 3 weeks. But guess what? Once summer is fully out there, everybody's going to be out there, not caring, because they just feel like being indoors for 2-3 months has been enough touch-up. So it's relative. So understand the behavior of your marketplace as well is very critical.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tony.
That's right.
It's a question that is being asked. Where does innovation or being an innovator comes into when you're talking about being an entrepreneur? I know there's some talks Emmanuel had. He talks about innovation, and where does that come in when you're talking about being an entrepreneur? Is it that when you innovate something new, it makes you stand out because you're new? Where does that come in?
Okay, so there's been this argument about creativity and innovation. For me, it's pretty much like trying to find a difference between 6 and it doesn't. When you bring new aspects to a business, you've created. And when you're creating something new, you've actually created. It's actually the mindset that matters. And I'll explain to you what it means. Whenever I talk about innovation, what comes to people's mind is first IT. I need to bring, IT is an enabler, a huge enabler. But even without IT, you can still innovate. Innovation happens faster with IT. So I'll give an example. My wife resigned from MTN several years ago, and she wanted to go into food business. And I felt at that time that restaurant is not the way to go. Restaurant is a big business, particularly in Lagos. But I felt if you're starting out and you don't have that much income coming in, because if you want to start a fast food, for example, you need a space. Maybe you pay 2 million per month, then you hire staff, then you have to bring in chairs. By the time you're done, you're putting in maybe 20, 30 million into business. How much do you have? So I thought to her, I said, you need to do something different. What did she do? So she was amongst the first set of people that started the soup delivery business in Lagos. Lagos is about 25 million people or thereabout. So what did she do? From the comfort of her own personal kitchen, she decided to cook pots of soup, advertise to people out there. And it's interesting how people responded to it. People, rather than spend so much money to eat in a fast food, would pay money to have pots of soup delivered to their house. But guess what? That started a whole spiral, something new. People wanted to be trained on how to cook. So she started a class on teaching people how to cook the pots of soup. You would think she's losing, but the interesting thing we found out is even those who learned how to cook still came back to her to buy. So innovative, brand-wise, rather than call herself a chef, I'd say we have too many chefs in the world. If you can cook, you can teach people how to cook, then try something new. So we innovated a name, and she called herself a kitchen instructor. That on its own was quite selling. And then with the concerns about health, she went into food safety and the likes. That's another line that's selling. She'll soon launch a website where she's selling kitchen utensils and thereabout. 2-3 months ago, someone called her to come over to Uganda. They were setting up something like that. They wanted her to train. But I'm saying from the confines of our little kitchen, we moved accommodation, and now quite recently she's setting up a space that's both a kitchen, a studio for shooting videos, because she's been giving a free slot on TV, and she's doing quite well with it. She has a book out, How to Make Your Food Your Medicine. So I'm saying some people are still stuck as chefs in the last 10 years, last 20 years. But this young lady came up and spun one idea that has several branches. She's happy, excited, doing about it. So going back to your question, what is different between innovation and creativity? It's basically the same thing. It's just how people see it. Every time you create a new idea or create something from something that's already old, you're innovating. Because really, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just dimensions that we bring to it. Hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, I think so too. A question that's coming is, what's the main driver behind an entrepreneur? What makes people, what's the main driver behind an entrepreneur? And also, what is the, Dr. Osunde talks about analyzing your threats, you know, and maybe it could be dependent on the kind of business, the kind of you want to go into. But what do you think as one of the greatest threats or inhibitants that an entrepreneur would face going into a new business?
Yeah, if I take that, there's no sort of universal threat. Like we said earlier on, it depends on your local market. And just like one of our participants also mentioned about checking your sort of customer behavior. So there could be an array of threats or blockers that you could have. Depends on the local market, it depends on where you are, it depends on where you live, it depends on the times. But I personally think the biggest threat anybody could have is not being sort of objective or not trying to sort of do your homework. If you wanting somebody to give you a sort of a completed project and say, right, you do this, run away with it, you're going to make quick bucks, just like the get rich schemes will tell you. So I think that's the biggest threat when you're thinking business or entrepreneurship is all about massive returns very quickly. Okay, but if you get past that mindset to know that I need to know my local markets, I need to know exactly what's going on with my customers, I need to sort of have that journey with them, and then you begin to look at what are the issues I'm having, what are the blockers. My threat could be finance, yours could be maybe logistics. You want to invest from the States and you cannot live in Nigeria to do the investment. That could be your threat. So it really depends on the space you want to get into, depends on your local economy, and depends on a number of factors. But it's all about you finding out, get solutions to these problems, and try and forge on.
Okay.
Yeah, another question for Dr. Emmanuel. You talked about in your life story, you talked about real estate. Is that a good opportunity to go into? I know there are different aspects of real estate, right? There is this, I know you're into building and construction. There is also rental. How does one go around going that? Is it a good time to go into such a business now?
Well, I'll say yes, it's a good time. I mean, if you take an example of the UK space, for example, when the UK was spending months and months agitating over leaving the EU and all that, a lot of people were scared and thought, oh, when the Eastern Europeans leave the UK, there's going to be a crash in the property market. But I mean, again, as an investor, you take advantage of situations like that. They now decide, right, if people are leaving, and if that's what's happening, if people are leaving and people are not renting as much, then obviously there'll be a fall in property prices, which is what happened. It's dropped. So that was a good time to start buying. Okay. And again, now that we're having the COVID times and all that, everything's come to a standstill. So when people are back and life is back to normal, some people will be cash strapped, maybe because they've lost their jobs or whatever. There'll be a lot of foreclosures, which obviously the banks are preempting because people will have jobs. So again, you expect another wave of maybe cheap properties to buy as well. So I would say, the chances that it's a good time if you've got the cash, it is a good time. Again, depending on how much cash you've got, if you're going to auctions instead of buying, from agents directly, you can get a proper deal. However, you need to have the expertise or the resource or the capability to get people that can maybe fix the properties, to the state that you can actually sort of either sell or let out. But overall, I would think it's a good time. It's a good time. You can never go wrong in properties. If one area is overpriced, there are other areas that are upcoming. So it's all about doing investigation.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's a good one.
Sorry, John.
Yeah.
If I may just add a voice, Michael.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I'd like to react to the question on property, especially as it affects Nigeria. The outlook of the economy is such that most people do not think that we've come to the bottom of the pyramid. So in other words, there might still be very many days of slowing down of the economy, loss of job, and all that. So people can be on a lookout for opportunities in property, but we think it has not reached its bottom. And so it might not be a good time to come in now. They might need to wait for, some more months and then take advantage when it gets to where they're more comfortable. We haven't seen the worst of COVID impact on our economy yet. And so it might not be a good time to hold or get into new assets, especially fixed asset like properties. That's what I think.
Any thoughts on that, Prof. and Dr. Osunde? Any thoughts on that, Joseph?
No, I do agree. I do agree with that because sometimes the impact of changes within the market, it's not felt, most at the beginning. Eventually, you begin to feel the impact. The Nigerian scenario is, especially for those, somebody asked a question about if it's a good time to repatriate money from maybe the States or the UK to Nigeria. Well, with times like this, when obviously if you're getting very cheap finance and you want to invest in property in a place like Nigeria, I think after the post-COVID era, there'll be people that obviously want to sell because maybe business has not been going too well. You always have that in Nigeria anyway. But I think it's just a case of checking your local markets really and see exactly if it's the right time to invest or if you need to wait a bit more. Because sometimes you think you want to wait a bit longer and see if it's going to drop, and then suddenly the economy bounces back. So it's all about doing your maths and thinking when is the right time to strike. without taking too much risk. So I think that's very important to know exactly when to strike. You need to know your local markets and your customers. That would definitely help.
Yeah. One more question is on back to you, Dr. Joseph. It has to do with franchising. I know you're also into franchising as well. And I have one or two friends who have gone into franchising, and it didn't work out so well. At some point, I was exploring it, but it was really very capital intensive in terms of what you need to, the initial capital outlay. What do you advise in what potential areas one should look at in terms of franchising, and how one go around sourcing the necessary capital, because it seems to be quite expensive, especially if you're looking at franchising on the food industry.
That's right. I have to be honest on franchising. It's not as lucrative as sometimes they sell it. Like I said in the presentation, if they tell you you get a 12% turnover, just aim for 6%, because there's so many market forces there where you cannot source your goods yourself. You have to buy from the known suppliers. You cannot change your prices based on your local market factors. You have to go with maybe the national pricing mechanism. So there's a lot of variables that you cannot control, which is why it's a difficult one. However,
who is that knocking?
However, there's an opportunity within franchising if, for example, the property, for one of the big problems you have is the property, where obviously you want to operate, and then obviously having to get your goods from the franchisor. So if you can get across a bit of the property where you can get reasonable rent, it doesn't have to be your property, but the rent has to be reasonable. If the rent is 10% of your turnover, no, you're not going to make money. I mean, I tell people the first litmus test you're going to do is, if your rent is 10% of your anticipated turnover, you're not going to make money. So you have to be careful on the rent. You cannot control where you get your goods from, or you can't control your rent. So think about the location very carefully. Then the other thing is employment. Now you need to obviously play with your employment structure. Okay, are you going to get under maybe 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds? They are cheaper labor as compared to the over 25s, because you start talking about so many costs there in terms of how much you pay per hour, talking about their pension scheme, and all that comes in. So again, it's all about doing the maths. It's very difficult if you don't get that right with franchising. If you don't, especially with your rental, the property, if it's more than 10%, you will never break even. And then if you also talk about things like other charges, like what are the business rates within the area you're operating in. Some areas, the business rates are very high. Some other areas, you can get a bit of small business discount depending on the rental value of the property as well. So it's quite tough. In terms of getting finance, if it's a non-franchise, a lot of them do have standing deals with the banks. So let's say, for example, McDonald's has a standing deal with Barclays and HSBC. Same with KFC and Subway. They've got deals with HSBC, whereby if you because it's a known and tested business, as long as you can come up with a certain percentage of the money, they can loan to some extent on what you can get for the business. And then there are also opportunities for you to get equipment on rental. I wouldn't suggest that because the interest rate on that is quite high. So if you can get your funding either straight from the banks, then that's better. Some banks will only do franchisees that already have investments. Maybe they have the first franchise outlet, you're going on the second and third. It's a lot easier to get funding. If you're starting off on the first one, Barclays wouldn't, for example, in the UK, they wouldn't touch you. But HSBC will touch you and say, right, as long as you've got a very good credit score, they can take it forward with you. But I think the key is you need to do the maths to make sure that at least you're breaking even to get at least 7%, 8% return. You wouldn't get 16%. I mean, they will tell you that you wouldn't get 16% because you have to pay your franchisee fee, and there are so many costs involved. If you get your 7-8%, then you can begin to play with your figures, reduce your food costs, reduce your labor costs, and begin to play with those metrics. And you see yourself bouncing between 7, 9, 7, 9, and trying to cut down on your waste, because that's another thing with food. The waste is quite high because of compliance. Okay.
Is it okay to ask one final question, maybe a quick one?
Sorry?
Can I come with a question?
Yes.
In relation to the same? This is a question for UK based. I mean, I'm based in the UK, and the question is, if maybe around this time, someone is coming to the end of a mortgage deal, a fixed, and you know, at the moment with the Bank of England, the rates are the lowest they can ever be, I think. I don't know, I'm not sure. Is it the time to lock it in for as long as one can, the mortgage deal?
Well, yes, I will always say, if you can get a 3 to 5 year deal, I mean, that's what I always do personally, because if the mortgage rate, the interest rate is quite low, and the banks will always top it up with about 3%. So you'll be getting maybe about 2 point or 3 point interest rate, which is great. I would suggest oftentimes at least lock 2 to 3 years or even 5 years, so that things can settle. So if things do change, you can readjust within that space of time. Because one problem with variable is the fact that sometimes when things change very rapidly and your interest rate goes up, and maybe your earning power has not gone up with that rate, you begin to struggle. But if you have it locked down for about 2 or 3 years, and then you can always sort of walk around that, you have some level of stability, because that's one thing you want. You want some level of stability. But other people would think maybe it's good to go on variable, because when it drops, it cannot drop more than 0. I think we're on about 0.2 or 0.5. So is it going to be 0.1? So it wouldn't be. So it's a good time to lock it. And if they're going to increase it, as we've seen in previous years, they're going to be increasing by 0.2, 0.3. They're not going to increase by maybe 3%, 4%, 5%, because the government is very cautious. I mean, the economy has been very fragile for a while now. So that's why the interest rate has pretty much stayed very low, rock bottom, and it's not really going up quite quickly or drastically. So I would say locking down is, for me, I would advise a lockdown and not a variable, because it's not going to drop any more lower than this. And if it's going to go up, it's going to go very little up. So it's a safe way to play it.
All right, thanks everyone. I think we'll have to make a hard stop now. I want to apologize again. We've exceeded the time. We had some technical issues with the internet and all that when we started, so we delayed a little bit, and then we've overshot our time. But I want to think it's been quite productive, and people have gained some things today. I'm sure you've seen the presenters' contact details, so feel free to touch base with them. If you have any questions or support you think you might need, or advice in any area of any new entrepreneurship opportunity which you want to explore. For the copy of the presentation, you could drop an email to Like Minds. Like Minds is being hosted by Like Minds. We are an African professional network. We come together to support one another in areas of job enrichment and connectivity, and to empower ourselves to be better than what it is. Most of us had challenges when we came to the UK. I was told that I should not get anything, I couldn't get any good job when I came to the UK, but as God would have it, things has changed, and I've been going places to places. So we kind of giving back to the society. Hence, we're doing these webinars and impacting knowledge into people. So feel free to drop us an email with some feedback or thoughts. You have our slides there. Our email is likeminds88@gmail.com. For future information concerning other webinars. We want to run some other webinars in the nearest future. In the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have other webinars which will be running. So it'd be good that we have your details so we can contact you regularly to let you know that we're having other webinar sessions. So thank you once again for everyone. Thanks again for the host, Emmanuel, and Dr. Joseph for dialing in. And thanks everyone for joining today in today's webinar. So you take care, and you have a great day. Hopefully we will rejoin again when we have the next webinar session. So thank you and good night.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Effiong, Doctor, and John.
Yeah.
Bye.
You're blessed. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, John. This is
Thank you.
John,
Thank you very much, John. Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you very much. Don't forget to send us an email for the copy of the slides. We could send you the slides as well, please. Don't forget that.
All right, John. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Really
Have a good evening.
Very productive.
Thank you, John, and thank you to the team.
Thank you.
It was very, very productive.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. And also feel free to click on our LinkedIn page as well on the invite. If you want to know about Like Minds and also connect to Like Minds as well, we are on LinkedIn. So feel free to click on the LinkedIn page. So I think on our LinkedIn page on the initial invite, I think that will take you to where you become maybe a member, and we could now put you on the LinkedIn page we have on LinkedIn. So that would be great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
John, can we get Mr. Joseph's contact details, please?
Just drop me an email. Drop me an email on Like Minds. I will give his contact details.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Have a good evening now.
Bye.
All right. Bye. Bye. Thanks, Colin, for joining.